All right, we're back with another episode. Today's a lot of fun, but first I want to thank the sponsors like I always do. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com and go check out the list of sponsors. There's a long list there, guys. Go check them out. Support some of the brands that support the show. Special thanks this week to Gallo Tech. If you're designing a safe or you're designing a home display of any of your firearms or anything at all, check out Gallo Tech. Check out Rhino Metals. Big supporters of the show. Really love those guys. They got some awesome furniture. And Blackwater Ammunition. Go check those guys out. They do some awesome stuff. And they have ammo in stock, which is rare right now in some ways. But today's guest is a really special one. I've been trying to get a couple local influencers on to me, and people that have been running for office has been a passion play of mine for a while, because I love to hear their story and how they got here. So we have an interesting candidate on. She's not only a former Miss Nevada, if I'm not butchering this, but she's also a congressional candidate in Nevada. We have the one and only Lisa Song Sutton. What's going on, Lisa?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And it's really fun to have you on, because you have such a competitive, rich history that, there's so, I don't even know where to begin with you. It's a lot of fun. You've done a TEDx, you've done a TED Talk, you've done the pageant deal, you've done a little bit of everything, and you've been on the Vegas scene for a while. So there's probably no better person to talk to than you, right? In so many ways.
Yeah, I am so grateful to be part of this community. I moved here after I finished grad school and just started my business career working in a law firm. The firm still does to this day, business litigation, business bankruptcies. So it was a great place to learn about kind of what not to do in business. And from there, I started my first company in 2012, Sin City Cupcakes, and then just continued to proceed and become an entrepreneur from that point on.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to see somebody that's not only been, I use the term competitive at one point in their life or another in terms of the pageant work, and then, have a business and actually run a business, right? Like, it's crazy to say that, but run a successful business that doesn't involve, it's just refreshing to see somebody do all the different things before they run for office, because I feel like that speaks to your record. It's something that speaks to who you are. You've been there and done that in so many different ways, and you've done a lot in the community. I mean, what's more community than having a food services in the area? You get to meet and talk with and speak and spend so much time with so many different people. So I applaud you for that. It's refreshing. Usually we see these career politicians, right, that come from...
Yeah, people are tired of that. Yeah, voters are tired of that. And, that's why my campaign and my candidacy has really resonated with voters, and even just, across all sides of the aisle as well. Just people in the community who, realize and understand and remember me from the fact that I do have a 10-year track record of being part of this community within the small business sector. Certainly my time as Miss Nevada, United States, I did nearly 500 community appearances.
Amazing.
Volunteering in schools, reading in hospitals, working with nonprofits. I mean, that's your job. You become an ambassador for the organization,
it's a lot of
and
work.
You're out. Yeah, you're out working with nonprofits, working with schools, working with kiddos. I mean, you're out there representing the organization, but most importantly, you're heavily engaging in community efforts and nonprofits.
And there's pretty much no money in it, right? Like pageant work, you're losing money every time.
Oh, no, yeah, there's no salary.
Yeah,
at least here in Nevada, each state, they've got their own different stuff going on, but at least here and at the time that I competed, there's certainly no salary or anything like that. All the work that you're doing is volunteer, and each girl has her own journey. Each woman has her own journey and reasons for wanting to participate and wanting to win. For me, I had pretty much wrapped up my modeling career by the time I entered into pageantry. I modeled all during college and grad school, and so I knew that I wanted to use the opportunity with the Crown and the Sash and the organization to really just elevate my community work. I thought it was a great opportunity and a platform to use the Sash and Crown as a microphone to bring attention to a lot of these nonprofits that sometimes get overlooked, or they just don't have the manpower and the resources to get their name out there. And so, when you show up as Miss Nevada United States at a fundraiser or at an event to help these nonprofits, it helps them. People get excited. Sometimes press will cover it. And so I was just so grateful to get a chance to really forge strong relationships with many of our nonprofits here in town, who obviously, I still keep in touch with, still volunteer with. And I think that's really a great way for young women to get involved with their communities is through pageantry.
No, there's no doubt. It's an insanely competitive environment. And I think that's important because you post a lot of interesting quotes that show your drive and show your persistency. One in particular, came to mind. I was scrolling through some stuff and it hit home for me because I moved here recently and I kind of I've had an interesting take on Nevada since I've been here in so many ways, but I looked at it and I thought about it and I really was like, you said something. You said ships don't sink. Well, you didn't say, it was a quote. Ships don't sink because of the water around them. Ships sink because of the water that gets in them. Don't let what's happening around you get inside you and weigh you down.
Yep.
And in so many ways, I look at that and I think of all the sludge and crap that the president's had to deal with in the last couple of years, but also even here in Nevada, it's one of those states that's a little backwater. I'm from Boston, so I'm used to the old political establishment. We're not without our sludge and grift. It's a lot to overcome. I mean, where do you begin, Lisa?
I think for me, you have to stay rooted in your purpose. Otherwise, why put yourself through this? So for me, I really genuinely feel like I can do a better job than the current congressman. I do feel like Nevadans deserve to have someone who's going to be engaged and is excited to represent them and will not take this position for granted. And someone like myself who has that private sector, other world type of experience, other than being a politician or government bureaucracy, or being involved in government bureaucracy. I think it's so important. The government, in my opinion, is supposed to be a citizen legislature made up of real people with real jobs outside of government bureaucracy. So that way we bring those experiences with us. And the opportunity is to be more action oriented. I think you see it with the president. He is someone who left the private sector, left his businesses to serve the country. And he's so action oriented. He bird dogs things down and he says, okay, let's go. We're executing. And that is what's done in business every single day. We have to be resourceful. We have to commit to an action. There's no time to say, oh, well, let's just let it pass till the next legislative session. Right. That doesn't happen in private business or real life, right? So I think it's so important to have private sector individuals like myself, like the president, involved in our government process and representing the people, because that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a citizen legislature.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's refreshing to hear you say that. And I love the quote because there's so much to, I look at it in Nevada's an interesting one. It's a battle in the old establishment here in many ways in terms of the party and beyond. And then there's the new blood coming in, and that's on the national and local levels. I love seeing candidates come in with that fresh take, and I think it's important to have that. It's a struggle here because you have the large influx of liberals from California, of course, and then you have people coming in from different areas, and I worry that there'll be a mass exodus here of especially Republican voters to Arizona eventually because staying here, they're fighting the tide with the influx from California, and that's a tough thing to overcome to energize the party, but you need young blood like yourself to keep the party energized. And I feel like there's some resistance to that in some states because of the older, establishment within the state. They want to see the same candidates, you know what I mean, Lisa, go up, the same names, the same family, right, the same faces.
Exactly.
So I love seeing a candidate like you buck the trend. And have you dealt with any struggles overcoming that within the state?
Well, it's interesting because in my race in particular, at least in this primary that we're still in, there's 8 of us on the ballot. We have the largest ticket as far as all the congressional races are concerned in relation to how many Republicans are on one in one congressional race. And, I have to say, I am pleased to see you do have some newcomers like myself. You do have some, establishment folks. So it's a real mix. And I think that's what the Nevadans deserve, and that's what the people deserve. They deserve choice. They deserve to be able to vet from a pool of candidates, as opposed to being told, well, this is who you need to vote for. Right. Or this is who's supposed to win, right? Like, no one wants to hear that. No one wants to be part of that. So I do think it's great that, you're seeing new people come forward, and, someone like myself who, I haven't always been involved, right? Like, I was so busy head down doing work, building my businesses. And so I think it's so important to realize that 2020 is the year for private sector individuals like myself to come off the sidelines. We as Republicans especially, we talk about, young people are not engaged, right? Or small business owners, they just don't get involved. Or, we have dwindling numbers because we don't have enough people, registering to vote or actively participating. Well, guess what? We need to be encouraging then to people who want to come off the sidelines and get engaged, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take new people, fresh people to, take up the fight and take up the mantle, so to speak. Otherwise, we just kind of leave it to the same old, and we see how that's treated us and worked out. It's not worked out well.
Yeah. And you get your work cut out for you. It's going to be an interesting race to watch because of the pivot factor. And there's so many different, variables in Nevada, as I said, with the influx the last few years of people. It's funny in so many ways to see this state, and I dealt with it in Massachusetts because you had a huge outflow of people to New Hampshire, and then everyone that went to New Hampshire would complain, right, that the laws were changing there because the people that fled from Massachusetts that wanted a more right legislative body or representation, and then they would go there and vote the same. You know what I mean? And you're just trying to, right. Yeah. So it's one of those situations So you really got to get out there and educate. You really got to get out there and inform. And I felt and have felt for a long time that you have to really buck the trend. You got to get out there. You got to be outspoken. You have to show people what's going on and what's happening. And I don't think they see it from that standpoint. It's going to be a very interesting election. It's going to be a very interesting election for you. Yeah. And I'm rooting for you, and I'm hoping that change comes.
Thank you. Yeah, well, and I was going to say, I do have to note, I speak to voters every single day, and, I must say, of the Californians that I have met, they are conservative. They left California because of the high taxes and low quality of living and just overburdensome government reach. And they came here and they registered as, they were registered Republicans in California, and then moved to Nevada and, re-registered here, and they're Republicans here. And they, just like Nevadans who were already here, don't want to see our state become more blue. So that is at least encouraging. And with the Californians that I have met, the Republican Californians that I have met, they also want to help Nevada protect its way of life and its freedoms.
Yeah, it's going to come down to what they do in the ballot box, right? And getting them out there to vote. Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting. Now, it's really rare that we're in the middle of election under circumstances that nationally could affect it, right? Now we go into this COVID deal, right? So everybody's an armchair quarterback, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say this, that, or the other thing. Everybody's an armchair quarterback. We've dealt with it the best we can as a country, as best as humanly possible. That can be debated all day long. But I'm of the thinking, now I'm not going to get into the mayor and that whole deal. That's a separate thing. But, it's interesting because if you boil off all the data, and I tend to agree with Elon Musk, you can't go around and say, well, that person was eaten by a shark, so it's COVID, or that person was bit by an alligator, but they had COVID.
That's ridiculous.
So you got to boil off all the data, right? And you have to get what we call clean numbers. So when you look at the clean numbers, to me, we're reaching a pivotal point where the cure is worse than the disease. And I've been a little critical of how, in some ways, we've seen, this handled, at least within our state. Not overly critical because I'm new here and I try not to step out of bounds. So I'm kind of just like looking from afar and I see. And I worry, casinos aside, we're too slow to jumpstart because I look at the casinos as almost a local but national part of our economy. And I say, you have to get everything else maybe but the casinos up and running. And we're too slow to do that here. What are your thoughts on how it's been handled locally and where do you sit in the debate of it?
I speak to small business owners every single day because that's my community, right? That's my wheelhouse. Those are my friends and colleagues. And I can't tell you the amount of frustration that I hear from my fellow small business owners. At the end of the day, of course, we want people to be safe. We don't want anyone to, get sick, certainly not on our watch, meaning like in our stores, right? So, there are heightened procedures and, the social distancing or, heightened hygienic procedures for staff, those kinds of things. Small businesses have already put those into place before the federal government told us that we had to do anything or before the state told us we had to do anything, right? That was already being done. And so now, I think the state really would be better served if they put the trust back into the hands of these small business owners who desperately want to open in a safe and responsible way just to be able to try to earn a living. Our unemployment system has taken such a hard hit.
Oh, it's broken.
There's unfortunately, there's tens of thousands of people who have not been able to, get much needed funds to, pay just for like basic living costs. And then on top of that, you have the small business owners who are trying their best to keep people employed and make sure that they don't end up falling into that unemployment system. And yet, you've got funding that's getting held up, or you've got, miscommunication around, well, what is the criteria? How do I apply? Who do I apply with? Oh, I can't apply there because I don't have a banking relationship there. Or I don't have a credit relationship there. Like, there's been so many arbitrary rules that have changed and changed and changed again. And unfortunately, the one that the person that it affects is actually just, it's us, right? It's the people, per usual. And so that's unfortunate. I hear frustration every single day from my friends and colleagues in the small business world. People want to get open. They want to open safe and responsibly, and they want to have the opportunity to build a livelihood and continue to make a living and pay, their staff and feed their families by being able to operate.
You know what scares me, Lisa, and I look around, I feel as if, okay, if everyone takes the precautions, I do feel like the precautions are getting a little out of control, but okay, I'll buy into that. But I also feel like some of these politicians, some, not all, I'm not going to name names, I'm not going to get personal about it, but I feel like everybody's looking around figuring out how they can make money off this now. And I get the vibe that it's not necessarily in the best interest of the people. And the people are confused. And everybody, when they get confused, they look around for the adult in the room, right? Like, somebody tell me what to do. And that's part of the problem we saw in Texas with that salon owner, right? She's like, I have to put food on my table for my family. Who's giving me, basically what she was saying is, who's giving me a check? You? And I know exactly. Gym owners, I'm not going to name them, people I'm close with, whether it's jiu-jitsu, judo, regular gyms. And I'm not talking about the guy in New Jersey. That was a bit of a publicity stunt. We know that. But I'm talking about in general, controlling your own destiny. We have a unique community here. There's fighters that need to be trained, as you know, there's this, there's that. People got to get back to work. People have to go back to doing their routine. If you don't break this at some point, you're never going to, it's like economies are not like a car engine. You can't take them to a dealer and say, hey, fix this.
You just turn them off and then turn them back on.
I try to put it in perspective for people. We've had, let's call it 100,000 deaths from COVID. When you clean the data up, remove people with pre-existing conditions and remove people that are beyond the average date of expiration in the United States, you're probably somewhere around 50,000. We've literally sacrificed millions of jobs, probably had when it's all said and done, we're probably going to have 20 to 50,000 suicides that are going to equal the amount of COVID. I just think it's getting completely out of hand and how it's handled. And that to me is a very serious thing. When you have people, suicide rates are out of control. out of control.
Mm-hmm.
When you have people that can't even get to work, and I know you know them in the food services industry, they don't know what to do. They're at the point they're like, they can't pay their bills. The pressure is so much higher. They're terrified. And I know you can only have so much say in what's done locally, but this is an issue people are talking about. And this is an issue that affects them. And I think somebody has to step up. I think the governor has to step up, and the governor has to start to be the adult in the room. But I just get the feeling he's looking around trying to figure out how to make a buck.
Well, and let's face it, anytime that you try to appease everybody, it becomes this paradox of choice where you don't act at all, right? And that's the danger in this type of situation. You know, hard decisions are going to have to be made, and you know, we need to do so with risk mitigation in mind, and we need to do so with the best data possible. But at the end of the day, a decision has to be made. We can't just, well, let's wait for more data, or let's wait for this, or let's wait for that, because every day that we wait is another day that a small business closes. Every day that we wait is another day that someone loses hope, that an individual loses hope. And just to your point, you know, the outcome on the back end of all of this, hindsight's always going to be 20/20, right? And there's going to come a day where we'll all be able to look back and say, oh, well, you know, wow, that was a good thing that happened, or that was a bad, or, you know, pointing out certain actions, right? That was a good action. That was a bad action. That was a good way to deal with it. That was not, whatever. But because we're in the midst of it right now, we can't see what we can't see, right? Mm-hmm. We're in the midst of this. So, you know, hard decisions have to be made. And I think that's what it's going to take. Like, we need to be action oriented with this. We need to be action oriented. We can't continue to wait.
Yeah, I agree with the president at a national level. There still needs to be a lockdown on outside travel. But when I look at even Clark County cases, it's insane. There's going to be more businesses closed than there were deaths.
Right.
That, you know, that's really got to sink in. That's really got to sink in. You
have to look at what the next part of the outcome is on that, right? It's I had posted on social media a couple of weeks ago a picture of a glacier. And, you know, the kind of top point is like COVID, right? And then underneath the water that we don't see, which is like the large bulk of it, right, is all of the extra ramifications and causal outcomes that are the direct result of our response, of lockdown, of, you know, all these different things that have happened, of small businesses closing, right, of all the things that have happened and will continue to happen, all the, unfortunately, ancillary outcomes that are a direct result of the entire matter. And, you know, how do we mitigate that? Right? How do we mitigate suicide? How do we mitigate these small businesses closing? Because what's the trickle down effect, right? Small business closes their doors, then X amount of people are now laid off. They're trying to get on the unemployment system. You know, how does that affect their household? You know, is there someone there who, you know, unfortunately maybe has mental health issues? You know, is this something that does the circumstance worsen their condition? I mean, it's, you know, question after question after question. And, you know, we have to try to be cognizant of all of that.
Yeah. I came, you know, from the firearms business and the defense business. So I understand, you know, I was a little recession proof, if you will, in terms of this, because everybody ran out and bought guns and ammo. So I'm on the other side of it in terms of I can look at this with a clear lens from afar. And I just look at it, and what I see is it's going to get far. The long-term ramifications of the things that are being put in place are going to be insanely dangerous in this state. And it's going to be, I don't envy the position whoever gets elected is in, because they're going to have a tough road to hoe to dig out of this. And they're going to be spending a lot of time dealing with this pandemic long after it's over.
Well, and for me, I mean, especially given my small business background, and I'm the only candidate that has this type of background with small business, I know what it takes to build. And the reality is that we are going to have to rebuild this economy after all this is said and done. And I look forward to doing that. I look forward to working with President Trump in rebuilding the economy, and also focusing on the America First agenda. You know, let's bring back American manufacturing. Let's bring back some of that dependence that we've had, unfortunately, on other countries, including China, obviously. You know, and we've seen firsthand how dangerous to have this kind of over-reliance is on overseas manufacturing. I mean, look, when everyone was scrambling to get, face masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and all this stuff, I was just blown away when people would go on Amazon and order it, it was back ordered for 3 weeks or whatever, and they'd finally get it in the mail. And I had a girlfriend send me a picture of a package she received. It was face masks from China. And so I was just like, this just goes like, why can't we manufacture them right here? Even in Nevada, like, why can't they just be done locally, or at a state level or even regional level? And so I think if anything, one of the clear, one of the clear lights that have been shined from all of this tragedy and the pandemic is that it's pointed out right in our faces the dangers of over-reliance on overseas manufacturing. We need to bring back American manufacturing and bring back American jobs.
Yeah, I agree. And people, like I said, I don't want to be an armchair quarterback, but I want to say, when you're looking for the adult in the room, and in these cases, it's the governors, for better or worse, that has to step up. People say, well, John, what would you have done? I said, I would have immediately put in place a 90-day waive of state taxes to all businesses. Immediately. I said I would have immediately done 90 days. You can't evict anyone for 90 days. We'll sort it out after 90 days, but you can't do any evictions. After that, we'll deal with pre-existing situations. And I would have put a statewide stimulus in place to maintain the businesses. Under X amount of employees, you get this. Beyond the federal. And the reason for that is right away you have to show solidarity to your businesses and to help them. Now, the casinos are a different animal. That's where federal comes in and so on and so forth, because they're just a bigger animal. But you and I both know a lot of businesses under 10 employees that something like that would be a lifesaver for them. A lifesaver.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. So at one of my shipping stores, our business next door neighbor is a small mom and pop tailor shop, literally owned by a husband and wife team. They're, retirement age, and the husband works the cash register and the wife does the alterations. She sews. It's just the two of them. They don't have staff. They don't have, any fancy stuff. It's a small mom and pop alteration shop. They sew the patches on the uniforms for the airmen at Nellis. And when all this happened, in March, when the order was given, or the edict was given by the governor, that quote non-essential businesses had to close, they were forced to close. And it was devastating for them because literally, like, how are they going to make a living?
Yeah. It's a real
how are they going to pay their mortgage? How are they going to pay their car payment? How are they going to put gas in their car, right? Food on the table. Like, it was so devastating for them. And, it was just so heartbreaking to be there for that and have to, kind of explain to them what was going on, because everyone was just confused, right? And at that time, there was no clarification around what's quote
no adult
essential
room,
versus not essential. And that was really, really difficult. But I mean, it's still difficult, right? They're just now coming out of it, whereas their business has been closed for the better part of 3 months. So I just think, it's really important for us to keep our small businesses in mind and at the forefront, top of mind, because it really is the backbone of our economy here, outside of the hospitality industry. And, the local community is that. It's made up of small local business owners.
Because to me, I think the governor jumped the gun and already trying to give away a grift job to a recovery czar and everything else. To me, that was insanely cart before the horse. He should have put some of these types of things I'm talking about in place prior to. And now they're worried about chasing people around and giving them tickets for opening. People are freaking out. They don't want to lose what they spent 10 years trying to build, and I feel like there's no sympathy towards that. So to me, if I'm a candidate running right now, that's a huge drum I'm banging. It may not win you points nationally because it's not a national topic. It's being dealt with at the local level. But at the local level, that's what people are scared about. They need someone to step up and be the adult in the room.
Right. Absolutely. No, yeah, people are so frustrated. And, again, obviously through this campaign, right? Like I call voters every day. I talk to voters every day. And that's an overwhelming, 100% hands down sentiment from everyone that I speak to. And they're just like frustrated. They want to get our economy safely and responsibly back open. And, let's go ahead and start that process without it being confusing phases and then, differing guidelines of what's essential and what's not and who can do this and now you're not. I mean, it's just, we need to be clear, we need to be communicative, and we need to be decisive.
I love the CEOs that have cut their pay or held their pay or froze their pay during this. I'd love to see more politicians do that. You won't, but
no kidding, right? Mm-hmm. They're all still getting paid.
They're all still getting paid and that's what scares me about some of it is this is mic time for people. And that's where I say it gets scary. Everybody's jockeying for microphone time and everyone's jockeying for TV time. But, it's something that will haunt us. There's no doubt for quite a time after. What do you think in Nevada as this goes forward, particularly here in the county, how we'll get I don't think tourism will be a problem, Lisa, and I don't say that coyly. I think more like, this is a state where the tourism will bounce back. How it'll bounce back and how they'll stimulate it and how they'll get people to feel comfortable will be another story, but people will still want to come to Vegas. It's not like one of those states that I think will have to fight for tourism. Mm-hmm. I don't see it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Las Vegas is, it's iconic, right? I mean, it's so iconic and there's a lot of, especially a lot of our Sin City Cupcakes customers, we have customers who come back here on yearly trips, and it's to celebrate their anniversary or celebrate a birthday. And Las Vegas and the Strip are part of those traditions for them and their families. So people will absolutely come back. It'll just be a question of when and how and, what does that kind of look like?
Now, I noticed you're a big fan of shooting. You get out and you shoot. I worry about this state when it comes to gun laws in so many ways. I look around and I've gone through the process. Like the concealed carry process here is a mess. When you put in, it's almost 120 days.
120 days,
plus. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And everybody talks about it. People post about it. It's a mess here. It's a mess. Mm-hmm. That's something I look at. I know it's at a state level again, but that's something that scares me because when they start to put a lot of red tape in front of the process of getting a permit, it makes it harder. Mm-hmm. I'm come from the firearms business. So, obviously I pick up quite a few guns here and there. Every time I pick up a gun, sure, it's $60 or whatever it is, or $40 surcharge every time when you don't have the permit. So they've put a lot of pieces in place I find very interesting to make it difficult to purchase a firearm. It becomes a slippery slope. And I've talked about this with Congressman Greg Stubbe, with Matt Gaetz on the show. When states start doing that to me starts to signal the beginning of the end. I worry about that. It's a slippery slope.
Right. Well, and, especially with 2A, I mean, at least for me, we've been just staunch advocates for education of 2A and firearm safety and firearm responsibility, right? So, for me as a petite woman, I'll meet people who are like, oh, like you go shooting or, oh, and they're like gun neophytes, like they're not familiar with firearms or guns. So for me, I come from a military family. My father's a Vietnam veteran and, he taught me how to shoot when I was 9, but what he also taught me was safety and responsibility around the firearm. And, so I've found, the best way for me to, advocate for 2A rights and less infringement on our 2A right is kind of leading by example and showing, especially women, that this is a tool. This is something that can help defend you and your family, and this is not something to be scared of. Right? We don't need to overburden it with regulation because more burdensome regulations only end up affecting us as law-abiding citizens. Right? Criminals don't follow the law, like by nature. It's in the definition, right?
It shocks me when they start to put things like that in place because to me, I see it as the beginning of the end. When a state like Connecticut, and I literally have the Connecticut non-resident resident permit application here, it's one page. It's one page, and you mail it in, and you attach a photo of yourself, a passport photo, and you get approved. And they've dealt with shootings. They've dealt with school shootings, everything, the whole bit. I'm critical of it a little bit here because I just see the beginning of what I call deterring people from joining the process. And that's a scary thing, Lisa. That's when it starts to get scary.
Right.
So I worry about this state from that standpoint, especially, in the 2A platform. This is supposed to be a little bit like the Wild West, right? Like this is supposed to be where what America's all about. And, now putting some of these processes in place that they have scares me a little bit. So we'll see where it goes. I have, tremendous, love for what you're trying to do, and putting it all out there because not many do. And I love that you post pictures of you shooting and you're putting it out there and you're willing to do it. But definitely a concern from my standpoint. You don't see as many firearms companies here as I thought would be. When I moved here, I was kind of really surprised by that. Not as many defense industry sector companies as I thought. And I came from New England, which is insanely liberal, but that's the old gun belt. You got, Sig Sauer, Smith & Wesson, Ruger.
Right.
Kimber's up there. You have everybody in that whole Connecticut River belt. It's a little puzzling to me why that is, but I think it's something that definitely has to be highlighted at a national level because we have so many things to think about. I had Greg Stube on and we talked about even like the suppressor law with the ATF and how ridiculous it is to purchase a suppressor. We've talked about all those issues. So, hopefully I know you posted your ratings from the NRA and all that. Hopefully, we can rely on you come time when you're in the seat to fight these battles.
Absolutely. And that's really what it's going to take is, someone who actually is familiar with firearms to take up that fight, right? I'm always baffled and kind of blown away by some of these legislators who will come up with these really restrictive gun laws. And then you realize some of them have never even held a firearm before.
Amen.
They're not comfortable with them at all, right? They don't understand them at all. They think that AR-15 stands for assault rifle, you know what I mean? And you're just like, oh my goodness, like absolutely not. You should not be proposing legislation around something you literally don't understand and you know nothing about.
Scary.
Come to the range with me.
Yeah.
Come to the range with me. Let's talk about it. Let's have education on it. Let me introduce you to firearm safety and firearm responsibility.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it, right?
Yeah, we had, I don't know if you've checked the NICS checks. We had 1 million additional background checks in, I believe it was March, I believe. April saw similar numbers nationally. So we've seen almost the sum total of 2019 in the first 4 months, federal background checks.
Oh yeah.
Firearms.
I had friends when all this pandemic, stuff went down. I had friends reach out to me across all different political ideologies, and even some liberal colleagues who were like, "I want to get a firearm. What should I get?" And I was like, "Really?"
Yeah, yeah. I can attest to it. I'm not going to name names of people, but I had very, very prominent people in the community come to me and say, "I want to get a gun. Where do I go, or how do I do it?"
And they were just shocked that they couldn't just go pick one out and leave with it.
Oh, I was
like, right. You have to do a background check.
Yeah. I had 2 California FFLs on that discussed it very openly. People were shocked. They had these 10-day wait periods. They had these restrictions on ammunition, and they were just stunned. And we had lines out the door, and people are, people are scared. And I think that's going to take really the gun debate nationally anyway off the table, right? So I think nationally it's going to be a very tough topic to bring up. And I think one of the biggest mistakes prior to this was Biden coming out and saying, "Yeah, here's Beto O'Rourke, my anti-gun czar." And, oh God, as if he's not a disaster to begin with. But that's another story. The whole thing is just preposterous because now you have so many out there and there's not enough data as to where those people came from, as you said, different ideologies. So it takes a lot of that off the process. It's going to be an interesting election. I think a lot of things have come off the table. You're dealing with Biden's own problems and baggage, which is going to make for interesting local elections in so many ways, because a lot of people are either going to be, Lisa, insanely deterred by where one party's going or insanely in love with where the the other's going. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to cause, hopefully for you, a windfall of people that take a look at the direction. And I'm always all for young, refreshing, new, energetic ideas and people coming in with a new perspective. And what I see here in Nevada is a lot of the old establishment. And look, I'll be critical. I'll say it, it's not the elephant in the room. Well, what the mayor did is a classic example of that. She had great intentions, right? We love her. But, it came off like, whoa, like, are you all right, or are you on crazy pills? Like, what's going on? So, and I think that that's something we have to be, a little mindful of. You can't make the state look like amateur hour. Somebody has to step up there and have an adult conversation about how we're going to handle things. And that's what scares me.
Well, and I think, in the state, and what's really been resonating, especially with the voters, is that, they want representation that is representative of, not only our communities, our district, our state, and that's going to include young people. That's going to include small business owners. That's going to include women. So I'm like I said, I've said it before, 2020 is the year for private sector individuals like myself to come off the sidelines, stand up for our communities, and, hopefully have a unifying message as well. Unfortunately, this is such a partisan cycle, and there's so much divisiveness on both sides. And what we have to keep in mind is that if we are going to get things done, we're going to have to work with other parties. We're going to have to maybe even work with people that, we don't get along with, that we don't have the same ideology, policies with, that maybe we don't even like, right? Who knows? But in private sector, we've dealt with that before, right? Everyone's gone to work somewhere where there's someone there that you just don't like, right? But you have to sit down and work with that person to get a common objective done. And that's, the large part of the experience that I bring is that I have private sector experience. I have business building experience. And that's what it's going to take to rebuild this economy once this is all over.
Yeah. And hopefully someone that understands you don't use verbiage like, hey, we'll make our state a control group. Like, I don't think that's a smart play. But for the most part, your work will be cut out for you. And I applaud you for doing it. And it's going to be a scary time for a lot of people. And hopefully, you can step up with all your energy and fortuitiveness to kind of make this come together. I don't envy anyone in the position. I get the luxury of sitting here with a microphone and being able to just kind of putt from the side. But I hopefully, you understand where everybody needs to be. And I think you're doing that by having the conversations and getting out there and talking to the people, and your business alone speaks to that. So I applaud you. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, for getting in the fight. It's going to be tough, but it needs a strong leader. And I think you'll do a fantastic job. And I love seeing these young candidates all across the country step up and take the mantle. And, if you had known this was going to be the landscape you'd be running in when you started, would you still run?
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's no way you could have predicted this. I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity to take a stand, to get involved, right. To really serve the community in a meaningful way, in an impactful way, and get to work for all Nevadans. That's what's going to be important to me.
Amen. Well, it's well said. I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and I look forward
to
how this all plays out. Let everybody know where they can find you, how they can contact you, and how they can reach out and maybe help.
Yes. So you just go to my campaign website, lisafornevada.com. You can also reach out to me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Lisa Song Sutton.
And everybody check it out. She's got a great website up there. She lays out a lot of the strategy. It's really all encompassing. It's not a fluff piece. And the social media is tremendously encouraging, Lisa. You do a fantastic job with the social stuff. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you guys are looking for some inspiration, there's a lot of really cool stuff. She has done quite a handful of talks and has a really rich history. And I love the pageant stuff. Definitely. That shows the competitiveness, the drive. That's something that's incredibly rare. So, you've accomplished quite a bit, and I'm looking forward to see how this plays out.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
No, I appreciate you, and thank you for taking the time. Thank you to all the sponsors as well.